Hello Warhammer Explorers. Before we dive in, hit subscribe so the next transmission isn't lost to the warp. Every click tells me to keep building this universe with you. What if the Illuminati arrived in Warhammer 40K? Reed Richards studies the floating crack in space above the table, a thin wound that shows a whole galaxy burning. Around him sit the Illuminati, the secret council of heroes and kings who make the hardest choices so others can live in peace. The crack shows ships like moving cathedrals, armies marching under golden skulls, and a storm of thought called the warp that leaks into every mind. Reed and Dr. Strange join science and magic, building a gate that can cross to that distant war, and Strange warns that the warp will mark whoever touches it. The council steps forward together as the spell completes. The room twists inside out, and the gate tears open to the universe of Warhammer 40,000. The sky above Vorgath Prime splits like glass under a hammer. Millions of people in the Hive City look up from their work, their prayers, their fear, and see a wound of green and purple fire open over the tallest spire. Warning horns scream. The Vox Towers blare orders. Pilgrims fall to their knees and cry out to the God Emperor. Lisa, a young conscript of the Astra Militarum, the Imperium's human army, grips her laser gun and stares. She stands in a trench cut into the metal skin of the upper hive. Her squad is supposed to guard an approach to the orbital gun platforms. Instead, she watches the sky fall apart. Shapes drop out of the wound. 6 figures appear at once, slammed into real space by shockwaves of color and sound. One wears red and gold metal like a second skin, jets blazing at his hands and feet. One is a tall man in blue with a swirling red cloak and a glowing amulet that hangs over scars on his hands. Another is a man whose body stretches and bends like living rubber, wrapped in a white and blue suit, eyes wide as he takes in the nightmare skyline. A bald man in a simple suit falls slower than he should, wrapped in an invisible force. A dark-skinned king in a black catsuit with a silver necklace lands in a perfect crouch. A silent man in black, with a strange tuning fork crown, simply stands in the air, held by forces no one else can see. They are the Illuminati, though Vorgath Prime does not know that name yet. Dr. Stephen Strange feels the warp crash against his wards. It is not like any magic he has known. It is a sea of thoughts, screams, and hungry gods. It tries to crawl under his skin. He grits his teeth and forces a shell of light around the falling council. "Everyone stay close," he calls. His voice shakes more than he wants. Tony Stark's armor HUD explodes with data. Star maps that make no sense, weapon signatures he does not know, energy readings off every scale he has. "Different universe confirmed," he mutters. "Also, different brand of hell." The Illuminati's arrival draws eyes on the ground and in the sky. On a command deck, deep inside the Hive's upper bastion, Lord General Severin Holt watches Auspex screens flicker. The old soldier's coat is heavy with medals. His face has the set lines of a man who has ordered too many men to their deaths. He sees the warp tear. He sees the unknown figures falling out of it. He also sees a wave of hostile contacts rising from the underhive. "Cult uprising confirmed in sectors Gamma through Kappa," an officer shouts. "Massive spike in warp activity. Demonic signatures." Holt swears under his breath. "On the day the storm opens, strangers fall out of it," he says. "Send this to Inquisitor Voss. She will want to see." In a dark corner of the same deck, where incense burns and purity seals flutter, Inquisitor Elira Voss of the Ordo Hereticus watches in silence. Her bionic eye whirs as it zooms on the screen that shows the falling council. Her hand rests on the handle of her bolt pistol, a gun made to kill monsters and witches. Aliens, sorcerers, or worse, she murmurs. The timing is too neat to be chance. Above the hive, the Illuminati stop falling. Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, flares his body out like a living parachute. He wraps an arm around Xavier and Tony, another around T'Challa, and braces. His thoughts race, mapping pressure, gravity, air composition, everything. "Stephen," Reed calls. "We need a landing zone that will not vaporize us." Strange nods. He pushes past the roar of the warp, past the whispers that tell him secrets in 1,000 dead languages. He draws a circle in the air. Golden light sparks from his hands. The ring of fire cuts into the real world below, picking out a wide plaza near the base of a towering cathedral. "Now!" Strange shouts. The circle yanks them sideways. The sky jumps. The Illuminati blink, and in the space of a heartbeat, they are no longer falling from the tear. They appear in midair over the plaza and drop the last few meters to the ground, landing in front of a flood of screaming civilians. The enemy arrives with them. Warp flames spill from the crack in the sky and drip down into the streets as monsters. Demons with twisted metal skin and horned faces crawl out of shadows. Their eyes glow like coals. Their claws melt steel. Behind them, robed cultists pour from alleys, chanting and waving guns and knives. Lysa sees the demons first. She has heard stories. Every child of the Imperium has. But stories do not show you how a demon's mouth opens sideways, or how its laughter makes your knees lock. Her squad fires. Red beams of las fire cut through the smoke. Some shots hit cultists and drop them. Others pass through demons and do nothing at all. One metal-skinned demon, a living engine of hate, charges straight toward the packed crowd. Its claws spin like drills. It will reach the civilians in seconds. Tony Stark launches forward, thrusters flaring. "Hostiles noted," he says. More to keep his own fear down than for anyone else. He targets the demon, runs a scan, and sees that its flesh is half real, half warp energy. He boosts his reactor and fires a focus beam, tuned by Reed's quick data stream over their link. The bolt hits the demon in the chest and punches through. The creature explodes in a shower of molten brass and screaming light. The blast wave knocks Tony straight into a marble pillar. His HUD blares injury warnings and a dozen armor plates crack. The people behind the demon survive. "Armor at 60%, Tony grunts. "Next time I'd like a softer introduction party." Dr. Strange holds back 3 winged horrors with a shield dome. Each impact sends pain up his arms. The warp presses harder, sensing his power and trying to use it. He sees faces in the barrier. Some are his own, some are not. "Stephen, your heart rate is spiking," Xavier says in his mind. His telepathic voice is calm, but Charles is sweating too. His own psychic senses are filled with the warp's endless crowd of thoughts. "I am keeping the monsters out of the crowd," Strange answers. "Complaints may be filed later." Namor, King of the Seas, is out of his element in this dry metal maze. Yet he finds a way. A broken water main floods part of the plaza. Namor dives into the rushing stream, muscles coiling. He explodes out of it like a spear, slamming into a demon and breaking it apart with sheer force. T'Challa moves like a shadow among the cultists. His claws are made of vibranium, which drinks energy and gives it back. He catches bullets on his suit, then uses the stored power in a single punch that sends 3 traitors flying. He aims to maim, not to kill, but these enemies give him little room for mercy. Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans, watches it all from a few meters above the ground. He does not speak. He knows that even a whisper could shatter half this city. Instead, he releases a quiet pulse of force from his hand, a focused gesture that rips a winged demon out of the sky and slams it into the ground without a sound. The battle in the plaza is messy, fast, and brutal. Many cultists die. Some civilians die too, trampled or caught in stray fire. But most live because the Illuminati stand between them and the warp. Codex note: later Imperial scribes will name this day's saviors, the Hidden Council, for no records will show their origin. Troops of the Astra Militarum arrive in numbers now. Armored carriers roar up the streets, heavy bolters barking. Lines of infantry in flak armor form firing ranks with trained, drilled motions. They are the hammer and shield of the Imperium. They do not break. Lysa's squad makes it to the plaza edge. She sees the strangers more clearly now. The red and gold flyer, the man in the cloak, the stretching man who blocks shrapnel with his own body, the black-clad king moving with strange grace. They are not in any data slate of holy allies, her sergeant mutters. Keep them in your sights. If they turn, we cut them down. A roar splits the air. Drop. Pods slam into nearby roofs in a storm of fire. Doors blow open, and armored giants step out. Space Marines, Adeptus Astartes, 7-foot-tall warriors in blue power armor marked with a white Omega symbol. Ultramarines, angels of death. Their bolters thud and boom. Each shot is the size of a small rocket. Demons burst apart in clouds of ichor as they fire. One of the Ultramarines, a captain with a red crest on his helm, studies the Illuminati as he advances. He is trained to see threats and miracles as two edges of the same blade. Unknown Xenos or Imperial relics, a sergeant voxes. We shall see, the captain replies. But for now they fight the enemy. They have earned a moment's grace. The plaza slowly clears of enemies. The surviving demons fade like smoke as the local warp field shifts. The cultists are dead, routed, or captured. The civilians flee, praying and crying. Dr. Strange drops his shield and breathes hard. Sweat runs down his face. He feels something inside him now, a faint brand. The warp has tasted him. It will not forget. Charles Xavier looks at the crowd and hears their thoughts. Fear, awe, hatred, hope. He touches his temple and gently calms the worst of the panic. He knows he can't hold all these minds forever. He also knows that his work here is already a sin by Imperial law. Stephen, Reed says, stretching over to him. How bad is it? Worse than we thought, Strange answers. This place is soaked in thought storms. Everything we do here leaves a trail, and something is already watching. A Vox order crackles over nearby loudspeakers. All untainted forces stand down weapons and await inspection. By decree of the Holy Ordos, all unknown assets are to be detained for questioning. Lines of guardsmen and a full squad of Ultramarines form a cordon around the Illuminati. Lysa raises her lasgun along with the others, her hands shaking. Lord General Holt steps forward with a retinue of officers. Inquisitor Voss walks beside him, robed in red and black, rosette at her throat, power sword at her hip. By authority of the Inquisition, Voss says, voice amplified by a small speaker built into her armor. You will identify yourselves and submit to purity tests. Tony raises both metal hands. This is how you say hello here, he asks. Okay, I'm Tony Stark. We're not from around here. Voss's bionic eye whirs. Off-worlders, she repeats. Warp fallers. You appear with the storm and channel power like sorcerers. You will forgive me if I do not offer thanks before I offer suspicion. I am Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer supreme of my world, Strange says, keeping his tone level. We came to study this breach and, if possible, contain it. We have no wish to corrupt your people. Xavier speaks mind to mind. He sends a simple, calm thought toward Voss. We mean no harm. He lets her feel a tiny echo of his discipline and his guilt. Her eyes widen. She flinches, then bares her teeth. Stay out of my mind, witch, she snaps. If you do that again, I will have you burned. Up above, the crack in the sky shudders. New lights bloom within it. Lord General Holt looks up. His command vox chimes with a priority alarm. Long-range Auspex, an officer shouts. Translation signatures in high orbit. A full war fleet. Pattern matches the warband known as the Eyes of the Spiral. Servants of the Changer of Ways. The warp rift widens in answer. Vast shapes begin to slide through. Baroque warships, their hulls layered with screaming faces and shifting glyphs. The storm around them howls. Inquisitor Voss looks back at the Illuminati. We have little time, she says. If you are truly allies, you will help us hold this world. If you are enemies, know that your death will at least buy us a tiny delay. Reed shares a look with Tony, Strange, Charles, T'Challa, and Black Bolt. They all feel the same thing. This is already worse than any one battle. If they walk away, if they close the gate and flee, this world may die. We will help, T'Challa says. His voice is quiet, but it carries. Our creed is simple. We bear the burden so others may live. That is why we came. Up to now, the Illuminati have fallen into a galaxy of war, saved a single plaza, and drawn the full attention of a Chaos war fleet. The fortress cathedrals of Vorgath Prime groan as the city switches to full war footing. Macro cannon towers turn toward orbit. Void shield generators hum, projecting invisible domes of force over key districts. Millions of guardsmen rush to their battle stations. Choirs of astropaths scream as the warp storm claws at their minds. Inside the command bastion, a war council gathers. The room is long and high, its ceiling painted with faded saints and victories. Hollow projectors show the planet and its orbit, dotted with icons for ships, forts, and known enemy contacts. Candles burn in iron cages. Armor and robes rustle as leaders take their places. Lord General Holt sits at the central table, a heavy data slate before him. To his right stands Inquisitor Voss, hands folded, eyes sharp. To his left is Canoness Preceptor Malia of the Sisters of Battle, armored in white and red, a chain of reliquaries at her neck. Opposite them, Captain Acastus of the Ultramarines stands at parade rest, helm held under one arm. At the far end of the table, under watch by two full squads of stormtroopers, sit the Illuminati. Tony has stripped the most damaged plates from his armor and is running diagnostics on the rest. Reed is already scribbling equations on a piece of parchment. The local cogitators are too crude for him. Strange sits cross-legged, eyes closed, feeling the warp like a storm pressing on a window. Xavier watches everyone, listening. T'Challa studies the room, the maps, the faces. Black Bolt stands by the wall, silent, as a statue. Let us be clear, Voss says, voice cutting through the murmur. This world is under threat of total corruption. The Eyes of the Spiral do not raid. They remake. Hollow icons show the fleet, twisted cruisers, escorts, and a flagship whose prow is a vast spiral eye. Runes of Tzinch, the chaos god of change and sorcery, glow in colors that seem to hurt to look at. Our own fleet is small, Holt admits. 2 cruisers, 6 escorts, and the orbital defense grid. We can hurt them. We cannot match them alone. Then we must not fight alone, Reed says. He leans forward, hands on the table. We came here through a hole between universes. It is unstable, but it gives us one advantage. Our technology and our knowledge are things they have not seen. You wield the warp without the Emperor's grace, Canoness Malia says. Her eyes are hard. You call that an advantage. We call it sin. Strange meets her gaze. In my world, I use this power to defend all life, he says. I bind demons, close rifts, and stand against gods. The cost is real. The risk is real. But there are threats you cannot stop with faith and steel alone. Faith and steel have held the Imperium for 10,000 years, Malia replies, and we do not invite new sins into the fortress while the enemy stands at the gate. Holt lifts a hand. We will have time to argue doctrine after the planet survives, he growls. If it does not, it will not matter who was right. Xavier speaks calmly. Your enemy is not simply a fleet, he says. I touched the minds of some of the cultists. Their thoughts were not their own. They were guided, twisted, by patterns from the warp itself. Demonic influence. We know this, Voss says. This is more focused, Xavier explains. It is like a chess player moving pieces in many places at once. Your warband is led by someone who thinks in layers, who plans for our reactions. If we fight them like a simple horde, we will lose. That is why we burn corruption out at the root, Voss says. If this war cannot be won, we have the right to call exterminatus. We kill the world to save the rest. T'Challa's jaw tightens. Kill a whole world, he says softly. Men, women, children, all their works. You call that salvation? We call it duty, Voss answers. Better one world dead than 100. Better one city burned than 1 billion souls lost to chaos. Tony shakes his head. You're talking about pushing the delete planet button like it's just another line item, he says. In our world, we try a few other things first. This is not your world, Malia says. No, Strange says. It is worse. Which is why you need people who know how to fight monsters without becoming them. Enough, Holt says again, louder this time. He points at the hollow. Debate will not move those ships. We need a plan. Reed taps the display. The warp tear you have above your city, he says, is acting as a beacon. It is drawing their fleet in. If we can stabilize its edge, we can narrow the rift and control what passes through. You would tamper with the wound the gods have made, Malia demands. I would stitch it, Reed replies. I have mapped its geometry. It is not random. It is a pattern of probabilities. In my world, I have built machines to handle such patterns. Voss narrows her eyes. What would you need? Conductive material, sanctified if possible, Reed says. Power lines, anchors in key points of the city, and Dr. Strange's help to bind the structure on the psychic side. Strange nods slowly. I can weave a net into the local warp, he says. But understand this. Every time I touch it, it touches me, and it is learning. You speak as if the warp is alive, Holt says. It is worse, Strange answers. It is full. The Council finally agrees. Plan. The Imperium holds the orbital line with its ships and guns. The Illuminati, with selected Imperial units, will go to the main rift above the hive and set stabilizing pylons. Space Marines will escort them. Once the edge is fixed, Strange will try to narrow the breach. If we fail, Voss says, I will send the call for exterminatus. This is the mercy I offer. We try your way once. T'Challa inclines his head. It is more mercy than many would give, he says. But if we succeed, you will see that there is another path between surrender and slaughter. The fleet battle begins as the plan moves into action. High above Vorgath, Imperial cruisers and defense platforms open fire. Lances of white energy spear into the darkness. Macro shells, city-sized bullets, streak toward the Chaos ships. The void flashes with explosions. Chaos answers with lashed-together magic and guns. Warp-tipped torpedoes burrow through shields that were never built to resist thoughts. Demon engines swim through hard vacuum like fish in water. In the middle of this, the Illuminati ride a clumsy lander up toward the tear. The craft bucks as it climbs through turbulent air. Inside, the team waits with a squad of Ultramarines and a company of stormtroopers. The air smells of oil, incense, and fear. Lysa is among the stormtroopers now, promoted by accident and survival. She grips the handrail and tries not to stare at the strangers. First void jump? Tony asks her through the Vox. Yes, honored, sir, she stammers. Me too, technically, he lies, giving her a small nod. Remember, breathe, aim. Don't lick anything that glows. She gives a startled laugh and then bites it back. The Ultramarine captain gives Tony a long look. You make light of war, the giant says. I make light in war, Tony answers. Difference is important. The lander reaches the edge of the tear. Outside the viewports, reality buckles. Clouds twist into spirals. Lightning crawls sideways. The rift is a wound in the sky, and inside it is a torrent of colors and shapes that hurt the mind. Reed, Tony, and T'Challa deploy the pylons. They leap from the lander onto half-real platforms, guided by Strange's magic. Each pylon is a tall spire built from local promethium rigs and conduits, wrapped in seals blessed by Canoness Malia. Reed has woven new circuits into them, turning them into a web of hard probabilities, as he calls it. They plant the pylons at specific points around the rift, using both physical anchor lines and lines of energy. Stormtroopers and Space Marines cover them, firing at lesser demons that crawl out of the edges. Bolter fire and las blasts carve glowing scars into the air. Strange stands at the center of the pattern, on a floating platform of his own making. He chants words of power. The eye of Agamotto glows brighter and brighter, its light pushing back the warp like a tide. Sweat soaks his robe, blood runs from his nose. Stephen, you need to slow down, Xavier says in his mind. If I slow down, we lose control, Strange replies. The rift will expand. Thousands will die. Hold the line in my head, Charles. Keep me sane. Xavier stretches his mind around Strange's. He filters out some of the warp's noise, taking that burden into himself. He feels claws rake across his psychic shields. He hears 1,000 deals whispered in 1,000 voices. You can change everything, the warp tells him. You can fix every failure, every death, every lost child, if you just let go of the rules. I have heard that voice before, Charles whispers. He holds on anyway. The pattern begins to work. The pylons glow. Lines of energy connect them, forming a cage around the rift. The wild edges of the wound stop flailing. They narrow, condensing into a tight ring of sickly light. On the ground, sensors scream. In the command bastion, Holt and Voss watch as the warp readings shift. It's working, Holt says, almost not believing it. For now, Voss answers. Nothing that touches chaos stays clean. A greater demon notices. From deep within the storm, something vast moves. Eyes like suns open and focus on the tiny cage at the edge. A claw the size of a ship reaches towards Strange's circle. Black Bolt moves. He leaps onto a pylon and gestures to Strange. The sorcerer nods and wraps a shield around the Silent King. Black Bolt opens his mouth the tiniest fraction. A single syllable escapes. It is not a word anyone understands. It is simply power. The sound smashes into the demon's reaching claw. Warp flesh shreds. The whole storm shakes. The demon howls, its voice cracking mountains below. The force tears the edge of the rift inward, like a drawstring pulled tight. The wound shrinks. Black Bolt drops to one knee, chest heaving. Strange staggers as the backlash hits. His wards. 3 pylons overload and explode, showering sparks and holy fragments. A stormtrooper squad is vaporized. The rift stabilizes at half its former size. The greater demon's claw withdraws. The warband's ships in orbit suddenly lose some of the warp currents they were using. Their formations falter. Imperial gunners seize the moment. Lances and macro shells hammer the closest Chaos cruiser, ripping it apart. Cheering fills the bastion. On the edge of the tear, the Illuminati regroup. Reed checks readings. Tony patches blown circuits with jury-rigged links. T'Challa hauls an injured stormtrooper back onto a stable platform. Strange breathes, shaken, his hands blistered from channeling so much power. "We did it," Tony says. "We actually did it. We made the unthinkable physics problem behave." "At a cost," Strange says. He feels the brand inside him burn hotter now. The warp knows his shape. It knows his tricks. Codex note: the partial caging of the Vorgath rift becomes a rare example in Imperial records of foreign sorcery used to hold, not widen, a warp breach. The War Council meets again, this time in a chapel lit by both candles and flickering cogitator screens. Up to now, the Illuminati have helped the Imperium win a first real victory: a narrowed rift, a broken chaos ship, and a planet that still breathes. But the warp does not take such insults in silence. Holt stands before a huge statue of the Emperor, hands clasped behind his back. He looks older. Battles do that. "You bought us time," he tells the Illuminati. "That is no small thing. Our fleet can hold the line better now. Our troops can focus on the ground war. And the ground war will be worse," Voss adds. "The enemy will pour its rage into your world, where our guns cannot reach." Canoness Malia nods. "Word of the caged rift will spread among the faithful and the faithless," she says. "Some will see hope. Others will see blasphemy that must be answered." Xavier speaks. "You saw what we could do," he says. "We stabilized your wound without burning your world. We can keep doing that. We can teach you how to fight without killing planets." Voss's gaze is cold. "And when you leave," she asks, "will you stay to watch this stain? Will you bear the burden forever? Or will you walk back through your hole and leave us with tools we do not fully understand?" Charles hesitates. He knows the honest answer. They do not know if they can stay. Tony breaks the silence. "We didn't come here to play gods," he says. "Trust me, I've tried that. It ends badly. We came to stop a threat that might spill into our home. But we don't walk away from people who need help if we can give it. Your mercy is a luxury," Malia says. "Our mercy is a bolter round to the head of the corrupted. We do not have time to weigh every soul." T'Challa steps closer to the statue of the Emperor and looks up at its stone face. "In my land," he says, "we guard a power that could burn the world or heal it. We chose to hide to keep others safe from it, but that hiding had a cost. We learned that if you never trust, you never grow. You call their methods a luxury. I call them a different kind of courage." Holt rubs the bridge of his nose. "I have lost more soldiers than you can count," he says. "If these strangers can save a regiment with a spell, where I would normally sacrifice them, I am willing to risk some heresy." Voss rounds on him. "You would risk the souls of 1 billion citizens for a handful of saved guardsmen," she demands. "I would risk my own soul to spare theirs," Holt replies. "That is my duty as a commander." The argument hangs in the air. Mercy versus survival, freedom versus doctrine. Both sides are right. Both sides are wrong. The room feels like the edge of a blade. Before anyone can push it further, an alarm chime interrupts. A junior officer runs in, salutes, and stammers. Inquisitor, new readings from the rift cage. Someone is probing it. They turn to the screen. The narrowed rift shows new patterns of light. They are not random flares. They are symbols layered on symbols. Eyes, spirals, twisting lines that form a message, if you know how to read the warp. Strange squints. This is not just backlash, he says. Someone is talking. Voss nods, grim. The master of the eyes of the spiral, she says. Magister Kairos, Chaos Sorcerer. Every time we have heard his name, a world has burned. The symbols shift. For a moment they form a crude but clear image. 6 figures in a circle, mirrored and warped. It is the Illuminati, twisted into mockery. Then a voice echoes in Strange's mind, and in Charles's, and in the minds of every psycho on the planet. You are not of this pattern, the voice purrs. You are elegant, unused threads. Come closer, little weavers. Let us see whose design holds. Strange stiffens. Charles clutches his head. Across the world, astropaths scream. Power scaling interlude, I. Later, as they recover, Strange explains in simple terms what they face. Kairos is riding the warp currents we made when we built the cage, he says. He is using my own spell as a map to our minds. He can follow our choices forward in time, test how we will react, and shift the currents so that the worst outcomes become more likely. Reed adds, imagine a chess player who sees a dozen moves ahead, but the board itself likes him and nudges the pieces his way. Voss concludes, so this sorcerer can hurt you not because you are weak, but because you dared to touch his god's ocean. Every act of mercy, every clever trick, gives him more data to turn against us. The next attack proves them right. A wave of nightmares rolls across Vorgath. People with even the faintest spark of psychic sensitivity see visions of their own worst choices. Commanders doubt themselves. Gunners aim wrong for a heartbeat. Vital orders are delayed. The eyes of the spiral launch a coordinated strike. Warp portals open inside key hab blocks, spilling cultists and lesser demons. 2 manufactorums that build ammunition are overrun from within. A shrine to the Emperor bursts into blue fire and turns into a gate for horrors. The Illuminati split their forces. Tony, T'Challa, and Reed go to protect the industry zones. Strange, Xavier, and Black Bolt go to the shrine, where the warp event is strongest. Imperial Guard regiments and Sisters of Battle units move with them, bolters and faith ready. At the Manufactorium, Tony rewrites his armor's weapon algorithms on the fly. He plugs into the factory's cogitator controls, overriding the machine spirits with hard logic and a few whispered apologies to any offended tech priests. He turns conveyor systems into barricades and assembly arms into crude defensive turrets. Reed stretches his body into a shield wall to protect retreating workers, his cells straining at the strange physics of this world. T'Challa leads a counterattack through the metal forests of the factory, using vertical space and shadows, turning the cramped environment against the cultists. They succeed, but only just. Kairos' influence makes allies hesitate at key moments, makes explosives fail to detonate when needed, makes a key bridge collapse under its own weight, just as a squad tries to cross. Every mistake feels guided. At the shrine, Strange and Xavier find something worse. The once holy halls are now twisted. Icons of the Emperor weep blood that floats upward. Candles burn with green fire. In the air above the main altar hangs a spiral of light and darkness, coiled like a snake eating its tail. "We are inside his hand," Charles says quietly. Cultists chant below the spiral, their voices layered with other whispering tongues. Lesser demons dance around them, drawing symbols in the blood on the floor. Strange raises a shield, but the warp here is like mud around his feet. Each spell he tries to shape unravels at the edges, rewritten by a will that laughs at him. "Kairos is here," he says. "Not in body, not yet, but in math. Every move we make, he has already seen 3 ways." Black Bolt looks at Strange. Strange nods and casts a tighter bubble around him, focusing all his remaining care into making it solid. The Silent King's eyes blaze. He cannot stand being used as a piece in someone else's game. He steps forward inside the shield. He will not speak yet. Not until it matters most. The war for Vorgath has moved beyond simple guns and simple faith. Now it is a fight over who gets to write the story of the future. The Illuminati with their careful, heavy choices, or a chaos sorcerer who twists every choice into another line of his design. Up to now, Strange and Xavier have stood in a warped shrine, faced Kairos' avatar, and refused his offer to join the eyes of the spiral. Black Bolt's voice shattered the spiral gate, but the blast tore Strange's soul and left a brand in Xavier's mind. Kairos escaped with a scar, laughing, and left behind a curse that bends chance against them whenever they show mercy. A burning Aquila in the air above the shrine flared once, brighter than the warp, and every psyker on Vorgath heard the same silent command: "Come to the throne." The voyage begins on a black ship that hums with chained minds. The Illuminati stand on the embarkation deck as heavy doors grind shut. Rows of silent psychers sit in restraint chairs along the walls, heads shaved, eyes covered, their thoughts feeding the engines that will drag the ship through the warp. Sisters of silence, warrior women with no souls, move between them like shadows, their very presence smothering psychic noise. Xavier feels a numb zone wherever a sister walks. His telepathy dies in a small circle around each of them, like sound cut out of the air. It is terrifying. It is also a relief. Inquisitor Voss walks up the central aisle. Her rosette glints on her chest. She looks tired, one hand resting on the shoulder of a nearby psyker like a priest before a sacrifice. "This vessel will bear us to Terra," she says, "the cradle of the Imperium, the place where the Emperor sits upon his throne. You will be judged there." Tony folds his arms, armor plating still scorched from the shrine battle. "Can't wait," he says dryly. "Everybody loves being judged by a god on life support." Voss ignores the tone. "Remember," she adds, "if the throne finds you wanting, you will not return home. You will not return at all." The warp engines roar. Space bends. The ship stretches like a scream. Then the physical world falls away, and they are in the Imperium. Through narrow viewports, the Illuminati see a sea of colors and forms with no fixed shape. Currents of thought and hate flow around the hull. Warp creatures watch them as sharks watch a ship's wake. T'Challa grips a railing and watches the madness outside. "This is what they walk through every time they travel," he murmurs, "and they still hold an empire together." "Barely," Holt answers. The Lord General stands nearby in a simple duty coat, his medals removed for the journey. "I have seen charts of lost worlds. The galaxy is bleeding out. We just make the bleeding slow." In the Medicae bay, Strange lies on a slab of cold metal while servitors tend him. Machines whir. Needles slide in and out of his arms. Servo skulls chant static-filled prayers. The brand on his chest, left by Kairos' touch, glows faint blue under their Auspex lights, A Medici priest, face half machine, shakes his head. "This wound is not physical," he says. "It is a script written in his soul in letters of witchfire. Our tools can see it, but not change it." Strange forces, a small smile. "Good thing editing soul scripts is my job description," he says. Voss stands at the foot of the slab, watching. "You have been marked," she says quietly. Chaos does not mark things it does not intend to reclaim later. Strange looks up at her, eyes shadowed. "In my world," he says, "every use of magic has a cost. You carry it. You live with it. You try to make sure the people you save do not pay it instead. If Kairos thinks a little brand will make me give up, he does not know me." Voss studies him for a long moment. "You speak as if cost is a choice," she says. "In the Imperium, cost is an order. The Emperor paid first, we pay after." In the ship's small chapel, debates run late into the ship night. A bronze aquila hangs above the altar. Candles burn low. Outside, the warp beats like surf on the hull. Holt kneels in prayer, head bowed. Canoness Malia stands, hands clasped, lips moving as she murmurs litanies. T'Challa and Tony sit at the back, their voices low. "Your people see the galaxy as a burning house," T'Challa says. "You do not try to put out the fire. You try to seal off as many rooms as you can before the roof falls." "And your people?" Holt asks, turning. "What do you do when everything is on fire?" "We try to find the one beam that, if we brace it, stops the roof from falling," T'Challa answers. "Even if it costs us more up front. Even if we have to change how we live to make it work." Tony leans back. "I've been the guy who thinks he can design the perfect system from the top down," he admits. "Robots to protect the world, suits around the planet. Guess what? It went wrong. Because I forgot that people aren't pieces on a board." "And yet here you are again," Malia says. "You built a cage around a god's wound. You play with powers you cannot fully understand." Tony meets her eyes. "I learned to stop thinking I alone can fix this," he says. "That's why there are 6 of us. And now, all of you. We share the weight, or we break. Your motto," Holt says slowly, "is mercy through shared burden. Ours is survival through sacrifice. Neither is clean." "It never was," T'Challa replies. "But pretending it is clean makes it worse." The black ship sails on. Halfway through the journey, the warp thickens. The Geller field, the protective bubble around the ship, flickers. Lights dim. Warning bells ring. Crewmen cross themselves and whisper prayers. In the command blister, Mistress Helm Hestara grips the controls. Her eyes are wired into the ship's sight. She sees waves of thought bearing down on them. "Inquisitor," she calls. "Something is bending the currents ahead, like a reef in a storm. It is not natural. It is structured." Reed arrives with Strange and Xavier. They look through a psychic display, a hololith that shows not space but possibilities. Shapes appear in the warp. At first they look like reflections. The black ship mirrored in warped water. Then the images step out of the reflections and become vessels of their own. Elegant, twisted ships, their hulls covered in eyes and spirals, but their silhouettes are familiar. "They match our world's design language," Reed breathes. Stark, Wakandan, Atlantean tech smashed together and fed to chaos. Vox channels crackle with a signal. On the bridge, a figure appears in a column of warp light. He is tall, wrapped in a cloak of shifting script. His face is Strange's face, older and colder, with eyes like blue fire. At his side stand twisted echoes of the others. A Reed made of living fractal wires. A T'Challa whose suit is studded with eyes. A Tony whose armor flows like liquid and whispers. Greetings, selves, the Warp Strange says. We are the Spiral Council. We are what you become when you stop apologizing for doing what must be done. The air chills. Real Strange steps forward. You took Kyros's offer, he says. You let Tzeentch rewrite you. We accepted help, Spiral Strange answers. In our timeline, we caged 100 rifts, saved 1 million worlds, and burned only a handful. We did it by embracing the one truth your kind always deny. And what truth is that? Xavier asks. That manipulation is mercy, Spiral Strange says. If you know the pieces and the moves, you have a duty to play them the right way, no matter what the pieces think. Free will is a luxury in a universe this cruel. The Spiral Council moves. Warp tethers lash out, slamming into the black ship's Geller field. The field screams like a living thing. Images flash through every mind on board. Alternate histories where the Illuminati rule openly, where they take control of the Imperium, where they replace exterminatus with even stranger tools. Tony sees himself as Lord Designate of 1 million worlds, his face on statues. T'Challa sees a galaxy ordered by Wakandan logic, strictly efficient, subtly inhuman. Reed sees every rift mapped and sealed, every variable controlled, at the cost of turning people into data points. This is your flaw, Spiral Reed says. You think you can share power. You think you can carry everyone's consent. You cannot. You will drown in your own kindness. Strange grips the railing. Kyros wants us to believe that only his way works, he says. You are his proof, his bait. Maybe you did save worlds, but what did you turn into along the way? The Spiral Council attacks inside the mind as well as outside. Xavier feels a second Xavier press against him. This other Charles has cold eyes and a tighter, harder mind. I took control, the Echo whispers. I made them all behave. Wars ended. Hunger vanished. All it cost was their ability to choose. Then you lost everything that made them worth saving, Charles answers. His psychic shields flare. He holds the other Xavier at bay, not by brute strength, but by remembering every student who chose to do right when they could have done wrong. Black Bolt steps to the edge of the bridge. The Spiral Council's ships are pulling them into a web of distorted space. If they are dragged closer, the black ship's hull will start to melt. Strange meets his eyes and nods. Once more, he raises a shield bubble around the Silent King. His hands tremble. The brand on his chest burns like ice. Black Bolt opens his mouth a little wider this time. The sound that comes out is like a crack in the idea of quiet. It tears through the warp. The Spiral Council's ships shudder. Spiral Reed's fractal body collapses in on itself. Spiral Tony's liquid armor boils. Spiral Strange staggers. But the blast also rips through the black ship's own Geller field. Demons claw at the breach. Crewmen scream. A Sister of Silence walks into the heart of the rupture and lets her blank presence harden the bubble again. But she burns away like paper in a furnace as she does. The warp heaves. For a moment, everyone sees a light that is not chaos. A steady gold-white beam cuts across the Imperium, not bright enough to blind, but so constant that the changing currents shy away. It shines from one direction only. Every compass on the bridge swings to point toward it. Hestara gasps. The Astronomicon, she whispers. The Emperor's beacon. I have never seen it so strong. The golden light slams into the space between the black ship and the Spiral Council. The warp around them firms up, like mud turning to stone. The Spiral Council's coils cannot move in it. Their voices hiss and fade. In every mind on the ship, a single quiet thought appears, not in words, but in weight. Reach the throne. The Spiral Council withdraws, dragged away by currents they can no longer shape. Their last message hangs in the air. "You will come to us in the end," Spiral Strange whispers as he dissolves. "You will see that we were only the first ones honest enough to admit what this war demands." The black ship surges forward on a golden tide. Power scaling interlude and terrain. After the crisis, Reed, Strange, and Hystara stand over a star chart of the warp. Reed explains that the Emperor's beacon is not just a light. It is a fixed rule in a sea of shifting rules, a constraint line that even gods must bend around. Strange adds that this beacon can anchor them, but each time they call on it, it burns more of the Emperor's dwindling strength and draws more chaos attention to wherever they are. Hystara notes that, in practice, this means they will get a few moments of perfect clarity and protection in any warp crisis. No more than that. And each such moment will cost a little more of everyone linked to the throne. Voss concludes that under any new mandate, if they are allowed to use this light at all, it must be reserved for the narrowest, most vital edge between a world's death and its survival. The Sol system looms ahead. When the black ship drops out of the warp, the view is enough to still every tongue. Fortress stations ring the outer system, each the size of a small moon, bristling with guns and launch bays. The void itself seems full of metal and faith. Battle fleets patrol in strict patterns, their hulls covered in gilded icons. As they approach Terra, the scale only grows. Mars glows red, crawling with shipyards and forges. Vast dock arcs grip starships like claws, refitting them. Beyond, Terra shines like a shield under the Emperor's eye. Void shields shimmer around it, layered spheres of energy. Orbital plates hang above the atmosphere, each a city of guns. The black ship transmits its codes. Stations and ships turn their guns aside. Silence falls on the Vox. In the distance, like a mountain rising out of clouds, the Imperial Palace comes into view. It covers most of a continent. Spire after spire rises into the sky, linked by bridges and walls. Statues the size of skyscrapers stand on the outer walls, holding swords and books and skulls. At the center, a single vast tower rises higher than any other, its top lost in a soft golden haze. "Your Emperor lives here," T'Challa whispers, "in all this stone and all these bones." "He sits upon the golden throne," Malia says, voice reverent. "His body broken, but his will unyielding. He is the light of mankind." Transport craft carry the Illuminati and their escort down through thick, smoggy air. They land in a courtyard big enough to hold a city. Marble flags stretch out in every direction, inscribed with the names of dead heroes. Imperial Guard honor companies stand in perfect ranks. Choirs sing in the high Gothic tongue. At the foot of a staircase that seems to go on forever, golden giants wait. The Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guard. Each wears armor the color of sunlight, chased with red and white. Their helmets are crested. Their spears glow with power. They do not move like men. They move like ideas given flesh. Next to them stand more Sisters of Silence. Their faces are still, their eyes hard, their presence a cold void. As the Illuminati step from the transport, the air around them changes. For Strange and Xavier, the world goes suddenly quiet. The warp's buzz that has hounded them since they arrived in this universe recedes, as if a door closed. Their thoughts are their own again. The nulls, Xavier realizes, the blanks, they cancel our gifts. A custodian steps forward. He is taller than a space marine, but leaner, more precise. His cloak is deep red, lined with white fur. "Inquisitor Elira Voss," he says, "you and your charges are summoned to the throne. Follow, and do not speak unless spoken to. The climb to the inner sanctum is a pilgrimage. They walk through halls lined with stained glass that shows 10,000 battles. They pass through gates guarded by statues of saints and primarchs. They cross bridges where the air smells of incense and ozone. At one point they pass a Medici wing. Hundreds of bodies lie in stasis fields, wired into machines that sing data songs. Some are warriors in broken armor. Some are emaciated psychers. All are paying some cost. Who are they? Tony asks quietly. Those who feed the throne, Voss replies. Those who steer ships. Those who stand between the Emperor and the storm. This is the cost of our light. Finally, they enter the sanctum. It is a cavernous hall, metal and stone and gold fused together. Cables as thick as buildings run along the ceiling and down into a single point on a raised dais. There, half lost in light and machinery, sits the golden throne, and upon it, the Emperor of mankind. His body is a husk, robed in gold and bone. His face is half hidden by a mask and tubes. His hands rest on the armrests, fingers like carved ivory. His eyes are closed. Yet the moment they step into the hall, they feel him. It is not a sound, not a voice in the ears. It is a weight in the soul, a presence that has been there for every human in this universe since they were born, whether they knew it or not. Standing here, it is like standing under the sun after living underground all your life. Strange feels the warp recoil from this place. The brand on his chest hurts, then cools. Xavier feels his mind pushed out and then gently allowed back in at the edges, as if a giant hand is testing his shape. Everyone falls to their knees, even Holt, even Voss, even Canoness Malia, who weeps openly as she bows. The custodes kneel too, heads lowered. Only the Emperor does not move. Then Charles hears a voice in his mind. It is calm. It carries no anger, no joy, only a deep, tired purpose. You are far from home, child of another song. Charles swallows. Yes, he answers silently. You came to save your own world, the voice continues. To close a door you feared would break, and in doing so, you opened a door to another burden. Images flash through their minds. Vorgath burning, Kairos laughing, the spiral council, the caged rift, the plaza full of frightened people. You chose mercy over the surety of fire, the voice says. You refused the easy control that would have made you like the spiral council. For this, you have earned both honor and danger. Xavier feels tears on his face. We tried, he whispers. We made mistakes. People still died. In this age, the Emperor answers, there are no victories without graves. You measure your worth not by the blood you spill, but by the blood you did not spill when you could have. The Emperor's awareness touches each of them in turn. Reed feels his calculations laid bare and tested. Tony feels every suit he ever built judged, not for power, but for intent. T'Challa feels his secrets weighed, his choice to hide Wakanda, held against his later choice to open it. Strange feels his oaths as Sorcerer Supreme laid beside the brand of Kairos, like two different signatures on the same contract. Black Bolt feels his silence understood. You are not pure, the Emperor says. Purity is for the dead. You are functional. You can serve. The light in the hall pulses once. This is the reframing. In a war this vast, victory is not the absence of harm, but the shape of the harm you choose to bear, so that others do not have to. It is a cruel answer, but an honest one. The visions begin without warning. One moment the Illuminati are kneeling in the throne hall. The next, they are standing in empty space, surrounded by 3 great doors. The Emperor's presence is there, but softer now, like a narrator rather than a judge. These are your paths, the voice says. You may walk only one together. Your choice will bind not just you, but the way your worlds touch. The first door is marked with the symbol of Earth from their home universe. The second bears no symbol, only a blank circle. The third bears the double-headed eagle of the Imperium, crossed with a small stylized ring, like the rift they came through. Return, the Emperor says, indicating the first door. The door opens, and they see a vision of their own world. New York, Wakanda, Atlantis, the Sanctum Sanctorum. Their homes, their people. The rift above Vorgath shrinks and closes in the distance. The war in this galaxy goes on without them. Time runs strangely. They see a future where the rift never opens again over their Earth. Their friends live. The Illuminati grow old, but some part of their memory of this universe fades, like a dream you try to hold after waking. They remember that they did something terrible and necessary, somewhere else, but not the details. At the edges of the vision, they see hints of other tiers, other universes brushing against their own. Without the knowledge they gained here, they stumble more often. Sometimes they win anyway. Sometimes they lose. If you choose this door, the Emperor explains, you go home with souls mostly intact. You will carry scars without names. You may save your world or not, but this galaxy will burn on without you. I will not call you coward for this. You did not ask for a war across realities. The door closes. Free agent, the Emperor says, indicating the second door. The blank circle glows. Behind it, they see a third path. The Illuminati remain in this universe but refuse Imperial sanction. They move in the shadows, untouchable by doctrine, unfettered by law. They see themselves saving worlds the Inquisition would burn, slipping in ahead of exterminators' orders and using their science and magic to reshape battlefields. They see Kyros and others like him, learning their habits and laying traps. They see growing splits in the Imperium, as some worlds begin to trust the hidden council more than the Emperor's own agents. Civil war seeds itself in whispered questions. Who truly defends humanity, the distant throne, or the unseen off-worlders who keep intervening? The Chaos Gods feast on doubt. If you choose this door, the Emperor says, you may save more single lives in the short term. You may build pockets of sanity in the madness, but you will tear at the spine of my empire. Your very success will make others choose you over me. Chaos will wear your faces as masks. Tony flinches at that. He remembers Ultron. He remembers what happens when a tool for safety becomes the thing everyone fears. The door fades. Sanctioned servant, the Emperor says, indicating the third door. The Aquila ring sigil glows. Behind this door, they see themselves kneeling again, but this time in armor and robes marked with a new symbol. The Aquila with a small, perfect ring behind its heads, and 6 points of light set around it. They see Voss holding out a rosette, with that same mark added, half Inquisition, half something new. They see themselves deployed by specific call, appearing where rifts open, where chaos gambles high. They see victories, rifts caged instead of widened, worlds saved that would have been burning cinders, exterminators' orders cancelled because the hidden council found another way. They also see purges. They see situations where they arrive too late, or where their presence makes the enemy adapt faster. They see times when they recommend burning a world themselves because any other choice would let Kyros, or someone worse, gain a foothold that would doom a sector. They see themselves bound by strict law. No sharing of their homeworld's tech beyond controlled channels. No rewriting of imperial culture. no use of their power outside specific mandates. They see a leash, but also a focus. If you choose this door, the Emperor says, you will do the most good by my measure. You will intervene where I point, not where your hearts tug. Your mercy will be allowed only where it does not crack the foundations. Your failures will be mine, and I will share their weight with you. The vision lingers on the cost. They see Strange calling on the Astronomican beacon, burning pieces of his soul each time he reaches for that perfect clarity. They see Xavier taking in nightmare patterns, so that whole worlds do not have to, aging in his eyes even as his body stands straight. They see Tony, Reed, and T'Challa arguing over how much to share with local tech priests, always one breakthrough away from destabilizing a whole sector. They see Black Bolt using his voice only in places where whole cities are already ash, because any lesser target would not justify the shockwave. They see themselves becoming myths. Stories about the Hidden Council spread. Some call them angels, some heretics. Some planets pray for them. Others build defenses in case they ever come. 3 doors, the Emperor says. 3 kinds of selfishness. The selfishness of home, the selfishness of pride, and the selfishness of order. All choices in this age are selfish. The question is whose burden you choose to carry. Silence falls. The Illuminati stand in the vision space, hearts heavy. Tony is the first to speak. We could go home, he says. We could pretend this was all a bad dream we sort of remember. We have enough problems on our own Earth. Plenty of rifts, plenty of monsters. Reed nods slowly. But then we would know, in some hidden corner, that there was a galaxy we left to burn when we had a chance to do more, he says. I can't run numbers on that. There's no equation that makes that weight smaller. Xavier looks at the free agent door. I understand the temptation, he admits. To act without anyone else's rules. To go where we know we are needed instead of where we are told to go. But I have run a school that way. I have seen what happens when one man's conscience is the only law. It breaks or it hardens, and either way students pay. T'Challa's eyes linger on the 3rd door. In Wakanda, we kept our power for ourselves, he says. We told ourselves that sharing would break the world. We were wrong. We hurt people by hiding. But when we opened up, we did not burn everything down. We learned to share under rules. Maybe this is like that. Strange clenches his fist. The Spiral Council is what happens if we take the 2nd door, he says. We become the thing that thinks it has all the answers. We stop hearing the people in front of us. I won't be that man. Black Bolt signs with his hands, simple and slow. He shows 3 images. Their home Earth, then the Spiral Council's warped galaxy, then a symbol of the Aquila ring half in light and half in shadow. He touches his own chest, then points to the 3rd. Yeah, Tony says softly. I thought you'd say that. Reed takes a long breath. If we choose the 3rd door, he says, we are agreeing that some of our tools will never touch our own world. We won't get to use all the tricks we learn here back home. We may die in a foreign war and never see our friends again. We may also prevent this war from ever getting to them, T'Challa answers. Xavier looks up into the unseen eyes of the Emperor. Will you listen if we say no? He asks. Always, the Emperor answers. I do not chain those who can leave. I bind only those who choose the chain. Charles nods slowly. Then, I would rather be bound honestly than free in a lie, he says. One by one, the Illuminati step toward the 3rd door. Tony hesitates for a heartbeat, looking back at the 1st. He sees Pepper, his friends, his tower. He whispers, guess I'm saving the universe again, hun. This time with a different boss. Then he walks through. The vision shatters. They are back in the throne hall, hearts pounding, sweat on their faces. Their knees ache from kneeling. But something in the air has changed. A new symbol burns briefly above them. The Aquila with a ring and 6 lights. Then it fades, leaving the memory behind. The Emperor speaks, not in vision now, but as a pressure that fills the hall. "You have chosen sanction," he says. "You will serve as my hidden counsel, between worlds, under the eye of the Inquisition and the light of the Astronomicon. Your mercy will be bounded by these laws." Light spills from the throne. It touches Strange first. The brand Kyros left flares, then is overwritten by a new mark. The faint outline of the Aquila ring across his chest. The Chaos Tain is burned away, but the scar remains, a reminder of how close he came. Xavier feels nightmares ripped out of his mind in a single terrible moment. Every whisper Kyros left is cut, every chain severed. In their place is a thin, golden thread linking him to the Astronomicon, a path for warning, not control. Reed feels his knowledge of some possible timelines sealed behind doors he cannot open without permission. His mind is still vast, but there are now no entry signs on certain lines of thought. He knows that if he tries to push past them, it will hurt him more than anyone else. Tony feels his armor's connection to some of his riskier designs go dark. Anything that might turn into a self-willed AI or an auto-exterminator system refuses to boot in this universe. The Emperor has reached into his tech tree and pruned it. T'Challa feels a new oath settle over him, sitting alongside his vow to Wakanda. When the two conflict, he will have to choose, and that knowledge is a blade he will live on. Black Bolt feels a new restriction on his voice, a subtle psychic lock that will only loosen when a world is a true, final risk. He could break it, but doing so would scar the warp in ways he can almost sense. Voss steps forward. "In the name of the Holy Ordos, I accept your service," she says. "In the same breath, I vow to watch you. If you turn, I will burn you myself." Tony gives her a faint smile. "Nice to meet a boss who's honest about HR policies," he says. Maelia bows, still wary, but no longer openly hostile. "If the Emperor has marked you, I will not call you heretics," she says. "But I will march beside you and see with my own eyes what you do in his name." Holt straightens. "Then let us begin," he says. Vorgath still burns. Kairos still lives. The war did not pause while we talked. Boundaries are laid out, clear and hard. The Hidden Council may intervene only when summoned by inquisitorial seal, or when a warp breach threatens more than one world at once. Share limited technology and techniques with approved tech priests and battle psychers under watch. Call on the Astronomicon's focus light 3 times in their service without further price. Each use after that will cost them memories, years, or pieces of self they cannot predict. They may not. Overthrow imperial governments. Found new, cults or churches in their own image. Rewrite the human genome or introduce large-scale AI. Use their powers to hide entire worlds from imperial sight. Mercy rules are also written. When they can save a world without ending another, they must try. If saving a city will doom a sector, they may choose the sector, but they must stand in the city when it falls. If they recommend exterminatus, at least one of them must watch from orbit and remember every name they can. Codex note. Later inquisitorial law will file the Hidden Council under the Lex Consilia Occulta, a little-known but binding decree that allows controlled Xenos-origined aid when sanctioned directly by the throne. Time moves again. The Hidden Council's first sanctioned act is to return to Vorgath Prime. They travel now in a different ship, its hull marked with the new Aquila Ring sigil. Imperial crews whisper and cross themselves when they see it. Some smile with secret hope. Some mutter about witchcraft. Kyros greets them with fire. As their ship drops out of the warp near Vorgath, they find the battle still raging. The caged rift flickers. Chaos ships circle like vultures around a wounded beast. This time, the Hidden Council moves with a different kind of confidence. Strange feels the Astronomicon at his back, a steady star he can lean on, but he does not call on its full light yet. Xavier uses his new thread to sense Kyros's influence patterns and send clean orders that cut through the doubt. Reed coordinates orbital strikes and pylon retunings with scopes and cogitators both. On the ground, T'Challa leads sisters and guards in a precise push to secure the manufactorums once and for all. Tony flies, not as a lone hero, but as part of an integrated defense grid, feeding data to every gun. Black Bolt holds his voice, saving it for when Kyros finally overplays his hand. The final confrontation with Kyros happens not in a shrine this time, but in the sky over the rift cage. The Chaos Sorcerer appears on a floating disk of warp stone, robes billowing, staff crackling with changing light. His armor is painted with eyes and spirals, his face hidden behind a mask shaped like a laughing bird's skull. "You went to the throne," he calls over the Vox and into their minds. "You let the Corpse King shackle you. Do you know how disappointing that is? You could have been artists of fate. Instead, you chose to be his janitors." "We chose to be answerable to someone other than ourselves," Strange replies. "That's the difference between us." Kyros raises his staff. Warp energy gathers. He aims not at them, but at the cage pylons, trying to rip the rift open again. This is the edge. If the cage breaks, Vorgath dies, and with it, a corridor the Imperium needs. If they stop him, their new mandate proves its worth. Strange and Xavier link minds. Reed feeds them angles. Tony positions his armor to act as a physical relay, turning spells into focused beams through his repulsors. T'Challa and Holt's ground forces clear demons away from the pylons so the structures can hold. Kyros twists probabilities against them, as he did before. Weapons misfire. A key pylon shorts out at the worst moment. A guardsman slips and falls onto a critical relay. Everything that can go wrong tries to. Strange feels panic rising. He also feels the Emperor's earlier warning. The beacon can save them, but not for free. He looks at Xavier. "Second use," Charles says quietly. "Is this worth another piece of us?" Strange looks down at the hive. He sees streets full of people. He thinks of Lisa, of unnamed soldiers, of children who have never once seen a sky without smog. "Yes," he says. They call. Not with words, but with a shared silent plea aimed along the thin threads tied to the Astronomicon. Light answers. For a few heartbeats, the warp winds stop. Chaos probability cannot turn. Kyros's staff blast freezes mid-twist, its wild aim suddenly locked in. The misfired weapons snap back into true. The fallen guardsman lands in a way that actually completes a broken circuit instead of ruining it. Tony's beam hits Kyros full on, not killing him, but ripping the staff from his hand. Strange's spell, now stable, wraps around the rift edge and tightens. Black Bolt gives the smallest shout, just enough to knock Kyros's disc out from under him. The sorcerer tumbles, cloak flaring. He catches himself before he falls into the caged rift, snarling. "This is not over," he hisses. "You can fight my plans. You cannot fight my nature. Change will eat your chains from the inside." He vanishes in a swirl of birds and eyes, fleeing into the warp. The rift shrinks again, this time to a stable star-sized knot, It still bleeds, but it no longer gapes. Vorgath is scarred, but alive. On the ship afterward, Strange and Xavier count the cost. Strange finds he has lost certain memories of his early years of study. He remembers faces without names, spells without their first spark. Xavier realizes there are whole days at his school he can no longer recall. The beacon took those in exchange for that perfect moment. They nod to each other, tired but resolute. "This is what we agreed to," Charles says. "Yes," Stephen answers. "And because we did it together, we can remind each other of the things we forget." Epilogue threads unspool across the galaxy. On Terra, in a dark chamber beneath the palace, a circle of High Lords debates the Lex Consilia Occulta. Some argue that the Hidden Council is a necessary tool in an age of worse evils. Others warn that trusting off-worlders, even throne-sanctioned ones, is a risk too great. In the Eye of Terror, Kyros broods. He traces the Aquila ring sigil in the air and laughs. "Bound servants break so much more beautifully than free ones," he tells his patron god. "We will see how many doors they can close before one door closes on them." On a distant craft world, an elder farser watches the new threads of fate. She sees 6 lights flicker in human destiny, drawing some events away from the worst futures. She also sees new, stranger patterns forming where human mercy and human obedience tug in opposite directions. She shakes her head and orders new runes carved. And on Vorgath Prime, Lisa stands in the rebuilt plaza. The sky is still scarred by faint, shimmering lines where the rift once gaped, but they are now a strange kind of halo. Soldiers drill, civilians rebuild. A statue rises in the center, guardsmen, sisters, a space marine, and 6 shadowed figures behind them, their faces left blank. Children ask about the blank figures. Lysa tells the story that is told in the regiments now. "Once," she says, "when the sky broke, strangers fell through it. They were not saints, not angels. They argued and bled and made mistakes, but they stood between us and the storm." "What are they called?" a child asks. Lisa looks up at the tiny Aquila ring symbol carved at the statue's base. "They do not put their names in the books," she says. "Some call them the Hidden Council. Some call them the Emperor's other hand. I just know that when the storm howls again, they will hear it." She touches the symbol on her own armor, a small, unauthorized sketch of an Aquila with a ring. It is technically heretical. She wears it anyway. Somewhere far above, in a place between universes, 6 figures stand at the edge of another rift, ready to step through to the next burning world. They carry their new emblem and their old doubts. They know the cost will rise every time, but they also know why they chose this path. Because in a galaxy where the easy answers are all monsters, someone has to carry the hard ones and still try every time to leave more lives standing than lying in the dust. Years move strangely in the Imperium. On some worlds, whole generations rise and fall while a single campaign crawls forward. On others, a battle ends and the next one begins before the smoke has even cleared. For the Hidden Council, time is measured in rifts closed, planets saved, and names remembered when there was no way to save everyone. Inquisitor Elira Voss writes by the light of a single lumen. Her chamber is small by Terra's standards, but its walls are thick and its door is double sealed. Scrolls line one side. A locked cogitator altar hums on the other. The desk in front of her is scarred by years of hard use. On the parchment before her, she writes the heading in neat High Gothic, on the efficacy and dangers of the Consilia Occulta, being the Hidden Council sanctioned by the throne. She pauses and then adds, in plainer Low Gothic, in smaller script below, filed by Elira Voss, Ordo Hereticus, who has seen them bleed. She dips her pen again. Operation Vorgath Prime, she writes. Status, world-scarred but stable, rift-caged. Chaos sorcerer, Kairos wounded, not slain. She lists the cost. Regiments lost, shrines burned, civilians dead. She also lists the things that did not happen. The exterminatus order never sent. The warp storm that did not grow. The plague that never had time to spread because a door was closed early. Then she writes, subsequent deployments, see attached. The attached list runs long. Hive world Caris Ultima, where a warp spill under the central spire once threatened to eat the city from below. Forge world Marnis Theta, whose machine spirits almost fell to a scrap code curse from the Dark Mechanicum. Agri world Varos Tertius, which the Council could not save from the Tyranids, but for which they found a way to seed nearby systems with enough food to cushion the loss. Each line has 3 numbers next to it. Lives estimated lost, lives estimated saved. Council usage of throne light, 0, 1 or 2. She reaches the line marked Varos Tertius and stops. Her hand tightens on the pen. Ink blots. She remembers that day very clearly. She suspects some of the Council do not. The beacon takes strange payment. The door to her chamber clicks. A figure steps inside without a word. Gold armor fills the doorway. A red cloak follows. A custodes. Tribune Acastian, Voss says, rising. She bows her head slightly. You walk far from the throne tonight. The custodian nods once. My watch is where his will is tested, he says. The High Lords whisper. Some of them want your council dissolved. Others want more of them. They are not mine, Voss says. They are his. Acastian's gaze flicks to the parchment. You are honest about their failures, he notes. Good. Honesty is rare and therefore holy. Voss lets out a breath that might almost be a laugh. I am honest because I do not know what to do, she admits. If I write only their victories, I become their priest. If I write only their costs, I become their enemy. Neither role is mine. What do you think of them? Acastian asks. Not as an inquisitor, as Elira Voss. She looks down at the blot over Varos Tertius. I think they are dangerous, she says. I think they are needed. I think I hate them sometimes, because they show me that we had more choices than burn or be burned. And now, I have to live with that knowledge. Acastian's eyes are calm behind his helm. The Emperor did not choose them because they are easy to live with, he says. He chose them because they are willing to be hated and keep working. Voss adds one more line at the bottom of the page. Recommendation. Continue sanctioning the Hidden Council under Lex Consilia Occulta, with strict oversight and limited deployment. They have earned no less. They deserve no more. She signs it. Her hand shakes only a little. On Caris Ultima, the sky bleeds downward. It is not a storm in the clouds. It is a wound in the rock. The Hive City hangs on vast pillars above a toxic sea, and now those pillars groan as warp stuff pushes up from far below. Screams echo through lower levels. Walls twist. Lights melt into dripping eyes. People run and do not always stay people. The Hidden Council arrives in orbit as alarms reach Segmentum Command. Their ship is smaller than the many Imperial cruisers, but packed with strange systems. Some are of stark design. Some are reeds careful math made metal. Some are simply wards painted by Strange on the hull with ink no one else can see. On the bridge, Reed studies a hollow. Caris Ultima spins beneath them, its hive spires like nails driven into a dying world. The rift is not in the sky, he says. It is under the primary load-bearing structures. Someone drilled down, opened it in the planet's mantle, then let it rise. That is inventive, Tony says, frowning. Evil inventive. 10 out of 10 for effort, minus several million for style. T'Challa points to a glowing cluster near the base of the main hive. There, he says, a power node. If we cut those lines, we slow the rise. But we will also black out half the city, hospitals, shield grids, food pumps. Strange closes his eyes. He reaches with his mind, tracing the warp currents. He feels a shape behind this rift, smaller than Kyros but cut from the same cloth. An apprentice. A test. Kyros did not like being driven off Vorgath, Xavier says quietly, reading the same currents. He is teaching his followers new tricks. We are making him smarter. We were always going to make him smarter, Strange says. Better a smart enemy who has met resistance than a smart enemy who has only eaten easy prey. They deploy. The council descends in 2 teams. Tony, T'Challa and Reed go to the power nodes with a squad of stormtroopers and a tech priest who mutters prayers to every cable he passes. Strange, Xavier, and Black Bolt go down a different route with Sisters of Battle as escort toward the rising warp serpent under the hive. In the power tunnels, the air is hot and thick. Steam hisses. Gears grind. Sirens wail. Tony's armor lights the dark. He flies ahead, mapping the path, guiding the humans along safer routes. Reed squeezes through narrow shafts, turning his body into ladders and bridges. T'Challa moves at the rear, watching for ambushes. They find the first node surrounded by cultists of the spiral. Their robes are patched with oily blue and pink. Their masks are simple spirals drawn on scrap metal. They chant as they pile explosives near conduits, turning the hive's own strength into a weapon against its heart. Non-lethal if possible, T'Challa says. Some of these people were taken, not turned. Tony nods, toggles settings. Always my first choice, he says. The fight is quick and close. Stun pulses flash. T'Challa's claws strike with controlled force, aiming for joints, not throats. Reed tangles a whole group in his elongated arms, disarming them with careful pulls. Some cultists die anyway. Some choose to run into their own bombs rather than be taken. The tech priest works, chanting Binharic canticles as he rewires the node under Reed's quick guidance. They redirect power, setting up a controlled shutdown that will darken some sectors but keep life support running in others. First node down, Reed Vox reports. 2 more to go. Below, in the guts of the hive, the warp serpent rises. It is not truly a serpent. It is a column of boiling half-real mud and hands and faces. It pushes up through rock, turning stone to foam as it comes. At its core, a smaller figure rides it. A sorcerer in patchwork armor, mask painted like a wide, mocking eye. Strange hovers in front of it, cloak billowing. Xavier stands on a crumbling ledge, mind braced. Black Bolt floats nearby on a disk of light shaped by Strange. You are a long way from your master, Strange calls. The sorcerer laughs. My master is everywhere there is doubt, he says. He thanks you for spreading so much of it. He lashes out with magic. Reality twists. The floor drops for an instant and then snaps back. The sisters behind the council stagger as their armor grows teeth and bites at their skin, before returning to steel. Strange throws up wards. The brand on his chest, now the Aquila ring mark, burns as it meets the sorcerer's power. He feels the Emperor's law pushing back the madness, but the pressure is heavy. Xavier dives into the sorcerer's mind. He finds a fanatical devotion, built not on faith, but on thrill. The man loves change for its own sake. He loves when plans break. He loves when choices hurt. I can end you, Charles whispers into his thoughts. I can stop your mind. You can try, the sorcerer giggles inside his own skull. But every moment you spend on me, the serpent grows. And it does. Warp stuff pours up faster. The hive shakes. Buildings above begin to lean. Strange looks at Black Bolt. The Silent King nods. He does not need words to say what they both know. Not yet, Strange thinks back at him. We save that voice for when there is no other way. They try something new instead. Strange reaches sideways, not up. He does not call the Astronomicon. He calls the cage they built on Vorgath. He remembers its shape, its math. He remembers the way they turned wild chance into narrowed paths. The Aquila ring scar answers. Golden lines trace themselves through the air, forming a half circle around the rising serpent. Reed's equations, Strange's spells, and the Emperor's steady light combine into a crude but effective collar. The serpent hits the collar and slows. It thrashes, turning into a cyclone of faces that all scream different choices they did not take. The sorcerer on its back shrieks as his ride tries to buck him. Xavier pushes hard. He finds the moment in the sorcerer's mind where he chose this path and shoves it back at him. You wanted chaos because you were afraid of failure, Charles says into his thoughts. You told yourself, if everything always changes, nothing can be your fault. Look at what you have done and say those words again. The man sees for a heartbeat, the people crushed as the hive shakes, children losing parents, old statues falling, names he knew once turned into smears on a floor. His focus breaks, the serpent falters, the collar holds, warp stuff spills sideways into vents and dead ends instead of straight up. Black Bolt raises a hand. He does not shout. He releases a tight, silent pulse of force, aimed like a spear. It hits the sorcerer alone. The man's mask shatters. His body falls off the serpent and into the shifting mud below. For a moment he screams in 3 voices at once. Then he is gone. Without a rider, the serpent loses direction. The cage lines squeeze. The warp stuff collapses into a smaller knot, then sinks back into the wounded rock, sealed by Strange's last spell. The hive trembles one more time, and then settles. Above, lights flicker but stay on. In the power tunnels, Reed and Tony feel the weight ease. In the streets, people stop fleeing and start, slowly, to look around. Later, on their ship, Strange stares at his hands. I didn't call the beacon, he says. I think we found a middle path. Use what we learned there without burning more of ourselves. Not every time will give us that option, Xavier replies, but today did. We should be thankful. Codex note. Some later savants in the Ordo Astartes will quietly argue that the Hidden Council's use of Vorgath pattern collars marks the first time stable warp cages spread beyond custody's control. They will also quietly thank them for it. Not every story ends with a world saved. Varos Tertius proves that. It is a green world in old records, fields stretching to the horizon, feeding dozens of hive planets. When the first Tyranid spores fall, the sky turns black with wings. By the time the Hidden Council arrives, the war is half lost. They stand on the bridge of an Imperial cruiser, looking down at a world already covered in dark stains, where swarms have passed. Macro cannon fire falls like rain. Orbital lance beams carve glowing scars into the surface. But the Tyranids are many, and they grow with every dead thing they eat. Reed speaks quietly. Even if we burn every Hive Fleet fragment in orbit, he says, there are already too many on the ground. Our math says that in weeks, not months, the world will be stripped. Any way to poison the biomass? Tony asks. A virus? A tuned field? Something that makes them choke on what they eat? We can design something, Reed answers. We cannot guarantee it will not spread beyond this world. The Tyranids carry what they consume. Release a poison into them, and you may be seeding it into the rest of the galaxy. Xavier reaches out with his mind. He hears only hunger, no fear, no mercy, no thought of anything but more. Can they be reasoned with? T'Challa asks. No, Charles says simply. They are a storm that thinks only one thought. On the hollow, red icons show remaining guard positions. They are small, scattered. Overrun markers blink more often than reinforcement markers. Voss stands at the back of the bridge, lips pressed thin. She hates the conclusion she has already reached. The Sector Lord has asked for our opinion, she says. Not the facts, those we can see. He wants to know if we will say the word he is afraid to say. Exterminatus. The order that kills a planet. Virus bombs. Cyclonic torpedoes. Fire from orbit that turns seas to steam and continents to glass. Strange closes his eyes. He sees the faces of the people they might save if they tried something wild. He also sees the faces of the people on nearby worlds who will starve if these Tyranids spread. This is what we signed up for, he says quietly. Not to find clever tricks every time, to know when there are none. T'Challa leans over the railing. Below, he sees farm towns vanishing under chitin waves. He remembers Wakanda's fields, safe behind shields. Varos had no such protection. How many neighboring worlds rely on this one? He asks Reed. At least 12, Reed answers. More, if we count black market routes. If the Tyranids use this as a spawning pool, they will eat those worlds too. Black Bolt stares at the hollow. He thinks of the times his people chose to flee and the times they chose to fight. He knows that sometimes there is no victory, just the choice of where the loss stops. Charles speaks carefully. If we recommend Exterminatus, he says, we honor our promise to protect the many. We betray the few who trusted us to find miracles. If we do not, we betray the many for a hope that may not exist. Tony's hands curl into fists. I hate this, he says. I hate being the one who decides who burns and who doesn't. I build weapons to protect people, and I keep ending up pointing them at people instead. That is war, Holt says from the side. The old Lord General had come as observer, not commander. Still, his voice carries weight. You do not get to choose whether someone dies. Only who and how many. Silence hangs heavy. Finally, T'Challa lifts his head. Then we follow the rules we agreed to, he says. We cannot save this planet. We can still save the others. If we refuse, we are choosing for whole sectors without their consent. Strange nods, face lined. We recommend Exterminatus, he says. We also go down there first. Voss frowns. You risk your lives for what? She asks. The order will stand either way. Mercy clause, Xavier says. Someone's sanction must stand in the fire. You wrote that into our mandate, Inquisitor. We remember. They descend. On Varos Tertius, in the last hours, the Hidden Council helps evacuate who they can. They shore up retreat corridors. They hold back swarms long enough for ships to lift off. They choose one city where the evac can succeed and focus there, even as others call for help. At the edge of a landing field, T'Challa pulls a child from the claws of a Tyranid Hormagaunt. Tony strafes a brood nest long enough to free a stuck transport. Reed stretches himself into a net to catch people falling from a failing flyer. Strange and Xavier stand on a hill and use their minds together. They send a sense of peace into those who cannot be saved. Not lies, just a softening. a hand on the shoulder at the end. When the countdown can no longer be delayed, they board the last shuttle. The ship rises. The planet shrinks below into a green-brown marble. Cyclonic torpedoes arm in their tubes. On the bridge of the exterminator's vessel, the captain reads the order, his voice flat. By authority of the Inquisition, and in accordance with the Lex Consilia Occulta, judgment is passed. Planetary scale cleansing. Varos Tertius is declared lost to the Tyranid threat. Fire is mercy. Fire is duty. The torpedoes fall. From orbit, it is almost beautiful. Lines of light crawl across the world. Clouds flash. Continents crack. Oceans leap into the air as steam. No one on the bridge speaks. Strange watches until his eyes burn. T'Challa memorizes the pattern of the fires. Tony marks the coordinates of every city they could not reach. Xavier whispers names, some correct, some guessed, but all given respect. Black Bolt stands like a statue, jaw clenched. Later, in their ship's quiet wardroom, they sit around a table. A simple slate lies in the center. On it, they have written Varos Tertius and nothing else. "We cannot let this become a number," Charles says softly. "If it becomes a number, we will start looking for ways to make the number prettier instead of making the choices better." "We will have to do this again," Strange says. "We know that. But I want to remember how much it hurts every time." Codex note: some guardsmen on nearby worlds will later carve Varos into their armor as a small, quiet reminder that even exterminators' orders are not just buttons pressed, but cities erased. Rumors say the Hidden Council started the habit. No proof exists. Word of the Hidden Council spreads, even when it is supposed to be secret. On a craft world that glides through the void like a ghost, a Farseer watches a set of wraithbone runes. She moves them with long, thin fingers. Each rune stands for a human force: the Inquisition, the Space Marines, the Imperial Guard. One new rune sits apart, its shape unsure. It is a small circle crossed by two wings. "Their pattern is strange," the Farseer murmurs. "They close doors others would leave open. They leave doors open others would close." A warlock frowns. "The Monarchy have many factions," he says. "Why should these matter more?" "Because they have seen beyond one stream of fate," the Farseer answers. "They have walked between songs. That leaves marks even we do not fully know." She flicks the Aquila ring rune forward. It collides with another, shaped like an 8-pointed star. War and light. The star cracks. The circle scratches. "They bring both mercy and disruption," the Farseer says. "Some of our own paths away from she who thirst now bend around their choices. They are perhaps an ally. They are also perhaps another storm." The warlock nods slowly. "Shall we seek them out?" he asks. "Not yet," she says. "Let the humans argue with themselves first. We will speak to the council when they stand alone in the dark and need a hand that is not one of their own." Inside the council ship, life between deployments develops its own rhythm. They eat in the same mess as their small Imperial crew. They walk the same narrow halls. They learn the same odd prayers, even if they do not always say them. In one corner of the ship, a small gym has become a training hall. Lysa, now a sergeant seconded from the Astra Militarum, runs drills with a handful of chosen guardsmen and sisters. The patch on her sleeve bears both her regiment's mark and a tiny, unofficial Aquila ring. T'Challa stands at the edge of the mat, watching. He corrects stances, shows how to use cramped corridors to trap larger foes, how to trust your squad instead of trying to kill everything yourself. "Why do you fight with us?" one young trooper asks him between bouts. "You could fight with your own people." T'Challa smiles faintly. I do, he says. Every time I help you stand, I am helping them too, whether they know it or not. The tides that drown you now would reach them later. In a small observation dome, Reed and Tony argue politely over a cup of recaf. Stars wheel past outside. One distant light shines a little brighter than the rest. The Astronomicon, visible this close to Terra's reach. Magos Karnaim is still upset about the last upgrade, Tony says, sipping. He liked my reactor design, hated that it did not have enough shrines built onto it. You did draw a small cog with a halo on the casing, Reed points out. Tony snorts. He wanted a whole mural. Apparently the machine spirits feel loved when you carve enough skulls on things. Reed leans back. They are adapting to us, he says. And we are adapting to them. I have begun to think in their units sometimes. Meters become thrones, seconds become litanies. Does that worry you? Tony asks. A little, Reed says honestly. Culture changes thought. Thought changes math. But if we do not bend at all, we will break. He glances at the glowing dot of the Astronomicon. Do you ever wonder what this place would look like if we had not come? He asks. Tony's face hardens. Yeah, he says. And then I remember that we did. Speculating the other way only leads to guilt or pride. We have enough of both. In the small shrine space Strange has claimed, candles burn with quiet flames. He kneels before no statue, but the room is not empty. On one wall, a simple carved Aquila ring symbol hangs, unpainted. On another, Strange has placed a small hidden symbol from his own world. The seal of the Vishanti, scratched into the metal. He prays in his own way, not for forgiveness, for clarity. He feels the thin thread to the Astronomicon hum. He feels the weight of his oaths. He feels sometimes the brush of Kyros's shadow at the edge of his dreams, testing the cage edges of his mind. Xavier joins him sometimes, sitting quietly. Do you ever regret saying yes? Stephen asks one such time. Charles thinks for a long moment. I regret that the choice was needed, he says. I regret that there were not better options. I do not regret choosing. He looks at the two symbols on the walls. Our worlds taught us that power comes with a duty to protect, he says. This world teaches that sometimes protection comes with a duty to obey. We are trying to walk the line between them without falling. Do you think we can? Strange asks. Charles smiles, tired but real. If we cannot, he says, we will at least make it harder for the next ones to fall the same way. In the eye of terror, Kyros stands on a fragment of dead world. The sky is a storm of colors that should not exist. Land floats in chunks, held together by remembered gravity and old pain. Around him, followers watch as he traces new spirals in the air. The council grows, he says. They learn. They share their chains with more people. This is good. A lesser sorcerer dares to ask, Master, how is that good? They have thwarted you twice now. Kyros chuckles, a sound like breaking glass. They have made the Imperium more flexible, he says. They have taught the Corpse King to allow a new exception. Every exception is a crack. Every crack is a path. He flings a handful of warp light into the storm. Images swirl. Strange burning away a corruption. Voss signing another deployment order. Lysa teaching recruits how to duck when space folds. A child on a distant world drawing a circle with wings on a wall. They are also teaching humans to think in more than two options, Kyros adds. Burn or be burned used to be so simple. Now there is cage and divert and almost saved. So many more ways for hope to fail. He smiles under his mask. We will break them, he says, not with rage but with interest. We will break them by making them choose so many hard paths that one day they do not notice when their feet slip onto ours. Years later, though no one is really sure how many, myths about the Hidden Council have grown thick. Some say they are the ghosts of long-dead Primarchs. Some say they are Xenos in stolen skin. Some whisper that they are the Emperor's children from another time, sent back as a test. On a minor shrine world in a forgotten subsector, a boy named Jorah sweeps the steps of a small temple. The temple's central statue shows the Emperor with a sword in one hand and a world in the other. Under his feet, someone has scratched, very small, a circle with 2 wings. Jorah's grandmother told him stories about that symbol. Once when I was young, she said, a storm opened over our world. We thought it was the end. But then 6 shadows walked out of the storm and closed it again. They argued with each other even as they saved us. They did not stay for thanks. Only that mark remained. Did the priest approve? Jorah had asked. She had smiled. He scowled, she said. Then he left it. Sometimes even the priest knows when the Emperor has made room for something new. Now, as Jorah sweeps, a small group of guardsmen stops at the foot of the steps. Their armor is dusty, their faces are tired. On their shoulders, in chalk or scratched into metal, Jorah sees different marks, regimental icons, kill tallies, unit numbers. On 3 of them, he sees a circle with wings. You know that sign? He asks shyly. One guardsman, older, with a scar along his jaw, nods. Yeah, he says. Picked it up on Vorgath. They told us not to paint it big, so we keep it small. Who are they? Jorah presses. The ones from the stories. The man looks up at the statue, then back at the boy. He chooses his words carefully. They're the ones who stand in the place where you've run out of choices, he says. Sometimes they find a new one. Sometimes they stand there with you anyway. Are they saints? Jorah asks. The man shakes his head. No, he says. They're people. That's harder. The guards move on. Jorah finishes sweeping. When no one is looking, he takes a bit of broken pottery and adds a tiny line under the circle with wings at the statue's base, turning it into a ring with 6 little dots. Just in case you're watching, he whispers. Just in case you need somewhere to stand next time. Far from that shrine world, aboard their ship between stars, the Hidden Council stands once more on the threshold of a new breach. The rift ahead is different. It is narrow but deep, a crack not just between places, but between kinds of reality. Sensors show strange readings. Xavier's mind brushes something that feels like a song in a language he does not know. This one does not feel like chaos, he says slowly. It feels sideways. Reed frowns at the data. It is not our home either, he says. It is something else. Another branch. Voss's voice crackles over the internal vox. Remember your mandate, she says. You step through only if there is clear threat to the Imperium, or if the Emperor's light directs you. Do not seek extra burdens. On the bridge, the crew falls silent. For a moment, they all feel it. A faint, steady weight, like a hand on the shoulder. The Astronomican's pulse shifts just a little toward the rift. Strange takes a breath. We heard you, he whispers. Tony rolls his shoulders. Another universe, he mutters. Another chance to make terrible choices for people we've never met. T'Challa looks at each of them in turn. Same rule as always, he says. We do not go to play savior. We go to keep a fire here from spreading there. And if we can do a little good while we are there, we will. Black Bolt nods. Xavier straightens. Reed checks his readings one more time and locks in the coordinates. They step toward the gate together. Behind them lies a galaxy that is still burning, but perhaps burning a little slower. Ahead lies a new unknown, humming with danger and hope. They are tired. They are scarred. They are bound. They are still, in their own flawed way, trying. Somewhere on Terra, in the dim hall of the Golden Throne, a faint, almost imperceptible shift runs through the web of cables and souls. The Emperor does not move. He does not speak. But for one heartbeat, his light leans just slightly in the same direction as 6 small figures walking into yet another storm.